Jerry, Bader Show, 1035, 406-1360, 888-455-1360. Talking with Wisconsin Congressman Reid Ribble, Georgia Congressman Tom Price. We started with health care. I moved on to other things, but you can, moving target, pretty much whatever you want to ask them. Richard in Green Bay. Richard, thanks for waiting. Hi, you're on the Jerry Bader Show.
Good morning, Jerry. Good morning, Congressman Price and Congressman Ribble.
Good morning.
I got a question for both of you. Are you going to support some kind of legislation against allowing the health or the human resources to use user IDs and passwords to pry into people's private lives on Facebook? And I'll take my question off the air.
All right.
There are allegedly multiple efforts to try to use your personal information, personal ID information, for purposes for which they ought not be used. This is Tom Price. I certainly support making certain that your personal information is protected and that you are the one that decides when that's used by somebody else.
I completely agree. The government has no business knowing your passwords, having access to your information, and so anything that moves us toward that direction, I'm a no.
What about the one? And I don't think this is where. In fact, I'm sure this isn't where he was going. But something did come up where prospective employers are asking people for their Facebook passwords. Would you support a legislative? I'll start with you, Congressman Price. Would you support a legislative remedy to that?
No, because I think you can say no. I wouldn't support a law that says that they must do that. But I wouldn't support a law that says that they can't do that. As a prospective employee, you can say that's not a place I want to work.
Man, same thing. If they ask you for your house key, would you give it to them?
Or my bank account?
That's totally up to you. And so,
no. Okay, let's go to Dwight in Wausau. Dwight, go ahead. Dan, I'm sorry. Dan, I'm trying here. Dan in Green Bay, I'm sorry. You're up next with the congressman.
Yeah, I don't. Right now, the insurance companies have caps on what they'll pay. It used to be $1 million, and under the law, it just went up. So I'm confused. What's the difference if the government has a death penalty cap or the private insurance companies have a death penalty cap?
That's a good question.
Hey, Dan, that's a great question. This is Tom Price, and a physician for 20 years in taking care of patients. And you're absolutely right. But this notion that it's either the insurance companies in control or the government in control is just flawed. There's a third entity that can be in control, and that's patients, which again is what our bill, H.R. 3000, the Empower Patients First Act, does. You ought to be the one that's controlling exactly what's going on and where you're treated, when you're treated, how you're treated, and by whom. So that's why I think that there are fundamental reforms and improvements that need to be made to the current system. The status quo is unacceptable because it is not responsive to patients.
Yeah, I think one of the things that gets left out in this whole discussion is that if it's not the Affordable Care Act, it's nothing else. And the fact of the matter is there were problems within the healthcare system that needed to be reformed, and those reforms still would have to happen. And so it's not just repealing the Affordable Care Act, it's replacing with something that's more patient-centered and market-driven. I think those are the types of solutions. Now, the one difference, to be specific on your question, what's the difference between IPAB and the insurance company, is that you have a choice to change insurance companies. You get to hire a different one.
Yeah. Dan? Go ahead, Dan.
Not if you get your insurance. Most people get their insurance through their employer, so you'd have to have some kind of law that would on the employer contract that would make it a reasonable amount, so you wouldn't have a death penalty with the insurance company.
Yeah, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I don't know if you heard the discussion, Dan, or not, about how do you sever the employer-employee relationship, because you're absolutely correct in that regard. You have one choice, and it's the choice that your employer gives you. What I'd rather do is give you the tax deductibility, give you the premium amount that your employer is paying, and let you decide. And I think that would help. I think that would help a lot.
And let me throw this in. I don't think either one of you touched on. All right, your insurance company says no, there's an appeals process. The government says no. Who do you appeal to?
Well, in fact, the law itself is unappealable.
Right, exactly.
You can't appeal to anybody. The folks on the floor of the House this week, on the other side of the aisle, said, well, you can bring it to Congress because Congress could overrule it. To which I replied, when they deny your heart surgery, you're going to bring it to Congress? I don't think so.
All right, let's get to Dwight in Wausau. Dwight, go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. Is it true that the online political arm of the Obama administration, that their mailing list, is it true that their mailing list was used to help organize the Occupy movement? And if so, whether or not that's true, because of the obvious connections of some of the organizers of that movement, why is it that our White House has not been investigated, as they are obvious players in that whole civil unrest?
I don't know that that's true, but I do know that Darrell Issa of our Government Reform and Oversight Committee is working full time and overtime, investigating multiple aspects of this administration. The challenge becomes, and it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. The challenge becomes which it's a target rich environment. Where do you go? These folks have brought a new standard or lowered to a new standard in political activity.
Final call. We got to let you go because we need to get to one other call, and then I have a question. Ken in Gillett. Ken, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Ribble. I heard this week on the radio a commercial for they call it the rotten egg bill. What's that about? That's the first I heard of it.
It is. You know what? And Ken, I've heard. We've been running that thing ad nauseum, and.
You need to bring me up to speed here.
Yeah, and Jason's going to do a quick Google on this. It's one of those things where I've been meaning to ask our farm. We do have a corporate farm director. Rotten Egg Bill. There you go. StopTheRottenEggBill.org. Combating the egg industry's attempt to keep hens in cages forever.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm on the House Agriculture Committee, and if you would shoot an email to my office, I'd be happy to get an answer back for you.
HR 3798.
Okay, we'll look into that and get back to you. Would you contact my office and give us your email address, and we'll get some information back to you.
Then I have a final question, and I would be remiss if I didn't do this because I went off for an hour on this yesterday. So I've got two congressmen here, so I have to point this out. Reid, I think it was you who mentioned it earlier, that gas prices, or if anything's going to sink the economy despite lifting Obamacare, gas prices might do that. And conservatives and Republicans, rightfully so, are pointing out the policies of the Obama administration, most notably monetary. Cheaper money means more expensive gas. I feel that the right, that is conservatives, Republicans, should point out it is the goal of the left to raise gas prices. He's not incompetent. He's not stupid. This is the motive, higher gas prices. I don't feel our side is preaching that enough.
We've talked about it. I've certainly talked about it, and the president's talked about it. Secretary Chu's talked about it.
Right.
They want higher gas prices to force us to use less. But, gasoline is not the biggest carbon footprint.
Right.
Heating this building has way higher footprint than driving a car does.
Sure.
And so it's just this scatterbrained energy policy that the president has, this administration has, that isn't getting at the root issues.
Both Secretary Chu and the president have said they want high gas prices. In fact, so the secretary before one of the Senate committees, is either last week or the week before, tried to walk that back. But Jerry, you're absolutely right. You know what they want. They want these prices to go up so that we get off a fossil fuel. But what we need to do is the all of the above strategy that really is an all of the above strategy, which is using everything, all the good, wonderful resources that the good Lord has blessed us with, and that's clean coal, that's fossil fuels, that's natural gas, that's nuclear, that's wind, that's solar, that's everything that we can, oil shale, everything that we can, so that we're not centering hundreds of billions of dollars overseas.
Reid Ribble, Tom Price. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Jerry, thanks for having us.
You bet. And I'm getting out here in the promised time. It's 10.